Okay, hello everyone. So the title of this talk is Ale and Zombie Apocalypse by Aleksandar. Please greet him and enjoy the talk.
Hi. Okay. Hi and welcome everybody. My name is Aleksandar Bakalov, amateur radio call sign Yankee Uniform 7, Tango Uniform X-Ray. And today I want to talk about automatic link establishment and the zombie apocalypse. First, let me ask, are there any ham radio operators in the audience today? No? Yes? Oh, nice. Where are you from? New York. Nice. No, you're a shortwave listener, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's great, that's great. So that's part of my hobby, and I'm very glad to see you here today. Of course, statistics would say that somebody will be a ham radio operator. After all, there are 3 million of us, you know, a little bit of a small state worldwide. I think some 700,000 in the US. And I promised to talk a little bit about, you know, interconnection between ham radio and the hacking movement. Most of all, hacking way of thinking. It does have some connecting points, but I'm going to get back to that, I promise, in the end of the presentation. But let's start with this first. So the topic is automatic link establishment and zombie apocalypse. So I didn't want to make it, you know, too boring, because usually we're getting called when there are some unusual things happening. For example, floods. Last year we had massive floods here, and amateur radio operators give the best to make communication uninterrupted. And you know, we do our part when there are some dangers, and you need to have reliable means of communication. So basically, when you have a zombie apocalypse, what happens is that, okay, page down. All right, so the question of danger in this hypothetically dangerous situation does not come from the zombies themselves. It comes from the other people. You know, zombies are slow, they're stupid, they're instinctively driven, and you know, you just have to watch for the large numbers, large quantities of them in the groups. But the largest threat is from the other people. Meaning you have marauder groups that wants to go to your group and to take what you have, or, you know, to pillage and plunder everything that is around. There is no rules, there are no laws, and they're probably going to be with weapons and dangerous. So the first thing you have to consider is how to protect yourself, your small group. For example, you have a family or small group of friends, and you want primarily to defend from the other people. And also, of course, you have to know the roots of the zombies, and you know, danger is also presenting from them, but mainly from the other people. So the people are the problem. And we are talking about the strategy here. I say civilization is like a sponge. I don't mean that by saying that it absorbs something. It does, certainly, but in this way I want to mention one of the curious things about the sea sponges. You know, if you put it through the sieve, you know, like through the sifter, but not your ordinary regular sifter from the kitchen, but it's actually going to be a silk thread or something like a silk material. And you're going to separate it to a single cells. And what happens then is very interesting. All those single cells tend to gather together and to bring back the sponge again in the form that it was. So I hypothesize that civilization is like that. So we have a sudden impact of something which disrupted the civilization in entirety, meaning zombies. And, you know, it disrupted everything, communication, connection between people and everything, you know, nothing works. But just the initial wave, meaning that it has to settle, and then the civilization is going to present itself, is going to try to assemble itself again. So your best strategy would be to, when you already have a small group, you should be aggressive. You should try to conquer all of the other groups and to make your group larger and larger, as large as possible, you know. And then when you're a so-called, let's say, a top predator among those groups, you're no longer at worry, and you can start rebuilding the government, the civilization, and the system again. So that would happen, definitely. So, you know, like this guy. Yeah, I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name in English, but you know, he founded the largest empire that ever existed, if you count the land mass. But it did that by conquering small groups, one by another. And in the end, he created the largest empire, larger than Roman Empire, than any empire that ever existed. Other question is how to retain that and how to govern. That's a separate question, but that is what you want. You want to be like him, in the case of zombie apocalypse. So let's talk about means of communication, channels of communication in that event of the zombie apocalypse or any unforeseen event. You want to have communication which is reliable. That's the top priority. So you want to have, for example, if you order your groups, like if you make them like a bit of an army, you know, you have your troops, you have your sergeants, I don't know, generals, whatever. You have to control them, and you have to convey the information about the commands, what they have to do to them. And this is actually tactical operation. Tactical communication, meaning that you have to be able to send the data to them. But let's consider for the theater of the zombie apocalypse, for this case, just to be the Europe, not some small region or something like that, not entire world. Probably is going to happen in the entire world, but let's consider Europe. So you have to communicate via large and vast distances, meaning at least 1,000 kilometers or more, couple thousand kilometers, and you have to have a reliable way of communication, of conveying your orders to your troops. And how do you do that? For operational communications, of course, if you wonder what's the best way of communication, of course it is ultra-short wave radio, two-way radio, talkie-walkie, or how we call it also. If you want simplicity, for example, tomorrow the guys from my ham radio club are going to be here. We're going to be a little bit of a workshop and, you know, just chit-chatting about anything that you want to know about it. We're going to bring a couple of radio stations and do the digital ham radio operation modes. If you want something simple, you have to learn Morse code, you know, because you can build transmitter for Morse code which can be heard 15 kilometers, something like 10 miles away, by just using 5 elements, you know, 2 of resistors, 1 transistor, general purpose and transistor, and if I remember, 1 capacitor, something like that. So 5 elements, and you can be online, you can transmit, you can call for help, you can scavenge, for example, if your plane crashes, you can scavenge those parts are very commonly found in any kind of electronics, you can make a transmitter. So, but what focus today is not on operational communications, but on the tactical communications, meaning on the communication for a long range. So, let's talk about that ALE, Automatically Link Establishment. Automatically establishing what it is and what it does. It's basically started as a US government and military standard. So it is, you know, it is open. You can read it. You can implement your own versions. And I'm going to take this opportunity because I see a lot of young and smart people here. So far, we do have software for ALE. We're going to talk about software a little bit later, but we have it only for Windows operating system. There is unfortunately no implementation for Linux of ALE controller, software controller. So if anybody is interested, you know, everything is open. You can read the specification, you can read the standards, and you can help, you know. So ALE is actually something which American military and government use. There are, for example, separate ALE implementation for Marine Corps. It's called Mars ALE. And what it does, I don't know how much you probably do know about radio waves and how they, how they travel. The problem with the HF radio waves for high frequency radio waves is that while they can travel large distances, for example, my local club had a connection direct two-way connection with some expedition on the South Pole. So direct connection from some godforsaken city in this region with the South Pole expedition, without any, without any relays, without anything in between. So it can go very, very long. Signals can travel in two ways. You have one component of the signal which goes almost straight line in HF, and it's going to get you probably some couple of hundred kilometers. But what is interesting is second component of the HF signal, which actually goes towards the space, and then it bounces off the ionosphere. So it bounces maybe a couple of times, and that way it can reach very, very distant lands, so easily. The problem with this is that it is very unstable, meaning that it is not like a telephone, It depends on so many things, and this is what makes a good ham radio operator, You have to know all these things and to be able to switch, for example, the frequencies. For example, some of the frequencies do not work at night. Or some of the frequencies, for example, 21 megahertz is very dependent on the solar flares. So when you have a large number of solar spots, every 11, 12 years, you have a solar maximum, and then you can talk with Japan using 21 megahertz like you're talking via phone. It's very, very good, quality is high. But when it starts decreasing, then you cannot do anything. You cannot hear anything. You just pack your antenna for 21 megahertz for next 11 years, and remember, the good old days. The problem that the American government wanted to solve is they didn't want to have highly skilled operators to depend on them. They wanted to have just the mediocre operators and to empower them to use HF in a reliable manner. So if you don't have a reliable communication, however, you can communicate over large distances, but if you cannot do it reliably, then it is useless. So Ale is solving that. We're going to talk a little bit more about how it solves that in details, but you can, of course, read there is we have standards. We can operate via voice or via text messages, or even, you have something which is called pilot stations, which you install some BBS software, and then you can leave messages for somebody else who uses the station. For example, nice application of Ale was in, I don't know which year that was, that sandy storm. And one of when everything goes down, civilization is fragile, very fragile. So when something unforeseen happens on a large scale, you're going to lose your phones, you're going to lose your connectivity to internet, you're going to lose everything that you take for granted. And what is left is this, you can take your station and connect it to the car battery and operate it straight away. You can move it, you can do whatever, you have a means of communication. So let's go down. Yes, so let's talk about, I'm not going to go too deep into details, there is no time for that, but as I say, you're smart people and there are plenty of information about this. I'm here just to notify you that this exists. If you don't know, it's an interesting thing. It is usable, and it has a community which grows. Meaning, in 7 years ago, there was a Ale network, global Ale network. It's called HF Link, hflink.org, I think, but I have a link in the end of the presentation. So let's talk about how it works. You have a couple of antennas, for example, per device, per transceiver. For example, for 7, 14, 3.5, and 21 megahertz. And the other guy also have a couple of antennas. And what happens is that you have a software and a hardware devices for, it's called Ale controller. If you have a software controller, it is embedded in the station itself. Those stations are very expensive for us ham radio operators. Prices went down, but still they are not too, too available. Usually the government or the military uses them, and then you don't have to worry. Or you can use the software. And what it does is this. Periodically, your station scans all of the available frequencies that it can, and just listens. If there, for example, I have to mention this first. All of the ham radio operators have their call signs. Mine is Yankee Uniform 7, Tango Uniform X-ray, and my Ale station would have my call sign. So I would assign that as a call sign for my station, and everyone who wants to contact that station would call that. And it works like this. My station would listen, for example, and if it hears, for example, your station, which could be Kilo 9, November, whatever, it's just going to remember the frequency it was heard. For example, you have antennas for 3 and 7 megahertz. It's going to record in a local database. Okay, I heard that station on 3 megahertz, 7 megahertz. The noise to signal ratio was this, bit error ratio was that. And I'm going to determine what's the best channel to communicate with you. Just going to remember that. And it just scans every 10 seconds, something like that. It doesn't make contact yet. It just makes a database of, who is around, who can I hear. And when you want to call the other station, it goes like this. For example, she wants to call my radio station. She just enters, if she has that specific radio equipment, she just types my call sign inside of the radio station. If she doesn't, she has her computer connected to the radio station, and it's connected via the sound card, basically. And then she types in my call sign. What happens next? Her station will transmit short bursts of radio waves and actually is going to call by name. My station still scans the all known frequencies and sees the first 2 letters of my call sign, and then it stops scanning. And then all of the others letters are like my call sign, and it's going to know that some station is calling me. Okay, let me see. Stop. And then it's going to, because that's her station is going to sound, it's called sounding when you transmit. So it's going to sound her call sign also. And the stations are going to automatically do the handshake protocol and it's going to establish the link. And I, as an operator, I don't have to even be here. It's going to be linked. And she can send me message. For example, there is a disaster situation, there are zombies attacking, and I have to fight with my crossbow. Actually, I do have a couple of bows, but not a crossbow. And while I'm fighting them, that message is here, waiting for me, I come back, I can read it. So the stations are linked. And in the end of the communication, when she wants to terminate that link, that communication channel, she has to initialize that. So it is not automatically, hanging out the phone or something. You have to click on a certain button and disconnect. So my station is free again to scan for the other station. What is interesting here is, for example, she has 3 antennas, I have 3 antennas for different frequencies. And what happens if, for example, 3 megahertz goes down? It is very bad propagation for 3 megahertz at that given time. Automatically, our system is going to, it always assess the quality of the link. It's going to say, okay, this is not good. Let us disconnect from this 3 megahertz and let us connect. We have 7 megahertz antennas both. Let's see that works. That happens automatically. So I don't have to worry about, communication and sustaining the connection. That's very important. Because when you're doing that like operator manually, you do have a problem. You always have to maybe agree with, let's go on other QRG, other frequency, let's meet, let's schedule, in the... this way you don't have to worry about that at all. So it happens automatically. This allows us, the ham radio operators, to do much more things, much more than we could, just manually. This just makes us better, meaning that single operator can handle multiple networks, because you can also make networks by using Ale. That's very important, because you have something like of a mesh of network. You have nodes, and every node can speak to each other. And if I don't see him, for example, his station, and I see him, I can relay the information through this station to them. And it's very resilient network, so it is very usable in an emergency situation, and it is used in emergency situation. Okay, so this is how it works. And this is a short diagram showing that you can have a mobile station, you can have a stationary station or whatever, and they all can communicate, so the nodes are equal. Nodes are equal, but there are some of the specific stations that I mentioned already called the pilot stations. They have a specific software installed on them, which actually makes them pilot station. They are available 24/7, all around the year. So you can use them like you would use any other node, but you can also use them as relays or whatever. Or they usually have something which is called BBS link software installed on them, so you can you can connect SMS messaging to them. You can send emails via pilot station, even if you don't have the internet connectivity. You can send, for example, you're in the jungle or whatever, you need to send email for whatever reason, and you can do that. You can actually send the information to the pilot station, and it's going to transfer the emails to whoever it has to be. It's just a regular email. It's nothing special, just SMTP servers sending something. Of course, if you use that, you cannot use it for spam. It's going to be too slow. And the other thing is you cannot use it for commercial purposes. You cannot, there is something which is called ham radio codex, and which says, for example, we cannot. There is very interesting presentation from Godspeed. I think it is connected to some digital modes of communication for ham radio, and he's actually just be there. It is interesting, but what I wanted to tell to you is that think about that codex of ham radio, which says we are not allowed to communicate in cryptography. We have to send everything as a plain text, and we cannot encrypt anything. So this is the codex. Of course, in the case of zombie apocalypse, yeah, you can probably bend the rules a little bit. Okay, so yes, there's a story about the software and hardware for Ale. So as it reads, most of the ham radio operators use this PCLS software, and it is coupled with the SSB transceiver via the sound card, meaning the only interface is, output and input are just sound waves, and you connect the mic to that, to computer, and you connect the output of the station to computer, and decode and encode, send the data to it. Of course, it helps if you have a computed CAT, which is something which controls automatically station. You can switch the frequencies by click on a button on the software. That's usually how it works. So we have a PCLA, and which is, if you look at it, unfortunately, I don't have a screenshot for it. It looks very outdated. It is in the terms of, how the UI should look these days and everything. But this multi-PSK is even worse. You have a zounce of controls, and it's chaos. So, yes, there are commercial Ale HF radios with Ale controller already built in it. So you can buy those. They are not that expensive as they are when it just started maybe 10 years ago. So you don't need to have the computer if you have those, but you do need to have, like, I don't know, $1,500, something like that, in the vicinity of it. So, for example, let us see here, we have one of those stations, ICOM F7000, which is encased. It is, I don't think it's sold in this case, but it's waterproof case. It's ideal for the case of zombie apocalypse. You know, you have the display on it, and you have the keyboard where you can type in the messages. Don't need to have the computer. It is not necessary with this station. But of course, computer gives you much more freedom and much more things you can do with it, meaning you can send files, textual files. For example, during the Sandy storm, actually one of the operators communicated across United States with the families of the people who are trapped, and send the list of the people who are missing, who are found, and etc. That was the only communication link that some part of the United States had for maybe a day or two, something like that. And all that it required is something like this, a little bit of wire, maybe, I don't know, you do need a little bit of wire, maybe 20 meters at least, but it can be any wire, and you just throw it out the window and you're good to go. So those are just some agreed frequencies, and I'm not sure that it's going to interest you that much, but just wanted to show you that there are agreements on, where you can operate, what you can do on certain bands, and that is also agreed with the International Amateur Union, so it is legally, all sorted out. Okay, let me try to. Okay, I think we saw this. This is actually a description on how the ALE stations are communicating between each other. And in the end, just let us mention this link. This is maybe the most important link for ALE communication. It is hflink.com, which presents the high-frequency link that's an organization of all the people using ALE. So it is HF network. It has, I think in the US, it has some maybe 50 to 70 pillar stations. And in the region here, we do have ALE network in Croatia, for example. In here, for some reason, they are not too keen. They do not see the value in that, but the neighbors in the European Union sees it. So we do have ALE stations, ALE pilot station in Zagreb, Rijeka, I think, and one other city. My ham radio club is going to make pilot station very soon. We thought that we were going to make it in time for this conference, but not yet. But it's going to be operational very soon. It's going to be on 10 megahertz, and you're welcome to join and to see, if somebody is interested. Ham radio hobby is open for everybody. And just to end, I'm going back to what I promised to you, what's the connection between hacking way of thinking and ham radio, and a little bit more of a history. Not going to take too long, on both sides of, let's say, subculture, hacking subculture and the ham radio subculture, you have intelligent people, which are driven by thirst for knowledge. That's the first thing. And on the both sides, you have people who are trying to excel and trying to extend the systems that they use to make it better, to find novel ways of communication. If you are very interested in communication, hackers are also interested in communication. There is Hamlink, I think, /broadband. There is entire broadband network of ham radio station connected to routers, United States, and for Europe I'm not sure, but they are. In United States there is a network of station transmitting everything over the IP protocols, everything like it should, and just using the ham radio stations. And so you have a group of people who like experimenting, who like mystery. For example, maybe some of you heard for numbering stations. that's something which is not cracked yet. You know, they started in the Cold War era. You had Soviet, you had German, and they still exist. For example, there are a number of stations in UK today registered, but if you ask for details, you know, just say it's a BBC registered station, something, something. And what they do is that at certain frequency, at certain time of day, they transmit some of those are voice, some of those are using Morse code, and they transmit something like this, you know, 5, 3, 3, 2, 1, 1. Stop, maybe three turns of those, and it goes silence until tomorrow. The other batch of number appears. Nobody knows what they are, you know. So there is a mystery. There is a bit passion for technology. For, you know, of course, we are not, most of us are not very rich people, and we have to, you know, do with what we have. So we have, you can make your own transceivers, you know, just trying to cut the costs. You can make your own antennas. And what is good is that it is interchangeable. And it can be crossed with all of the other hobbies. So, for example, you have computer scientists and software programmers who are ham radio operators, and they also help. You know, this Ale thing is also, you know, interconnected with that. And I'm just going to end with a little bit of history, just a minute or two. Bear with me. So, what happened is that, you know the name, the ham radio, how it became to be, you know. There are two stories, one that I like and one that I don't like that much. And the one that I like is that it just denotes the enclosure of first ham radio operators build their stations, and they just enclose it in the first thing that they found, that was a box of ham, which was usually tin box at the times. That's the first and probably unlikely scenario. A more truthful scenario is that original telegraphy operators, which were wired telegraphy, just were, you know, a little bit professional envy they had towards the wireless operators, and they said, "Oh, come on, those guys, they don't even know how to transmit code correctly. They have a ham hands, you know, they don't have good coordination." So that is the name, so ham radio. And to end with this, we are also connected, one development of ham radio is connected to one of the greatest tragedies in the world, which is sinkage of Titanic. After that, 1912. Before that, you could do whatever you want. On whatever band that you want, you can use whatever. After that, they saw that it's going to be a problem, you know. People started to intentionally interfere with the transmission of the other boats, of the government systems, of everything. So they wanted to, you know, to put the radio amateurs aside. So they said, okay, you can use whatever frequency of wavelength, 200 meters and less, which was considered totally useless at the time, you know. So they said, like, just go and play. And what happened is that because of ham radio movement, exploration of that part of the radio wave spectrum, I would like to think, is speeded up and saved humanity maybe 50 years of research in that, you know, field. Because we do have an army of 3 million people, and who knows, maybe some of you will join and be the Borg. Okay, thank you guys. And if you have any question, please ask. And tomorrow we will just be there with the stations, and you're free to work with us. You cannot transmit, but you can see how it goes. All right, thank you. Thanks. So, all right, no questions? Okay, that's, oh God, oh no. Please.
My first question is, this seems very end-to-end. You're talking to one of the stations. So is there a routing overlay is there something like a mesh network you can put on top of AIL? And if not, my other question is, what happened to packet radio? I mean, 30 years ago, ham operators were using a packet radio, AX25,
Yes.
to build communication networks, including routing. So what happened to them?
That's right, that's right. So package radio is still alive and kicking, so people are using it. But the hype in last couple of years is in something which is called BPSK 31, which is 31 baud speed, and BPSK for phase shifting keying. You have interesting lecture about that actually in the hacking sense that I said about the Godspeed. So yes, packet radio is not that much used, it is still used. About the routing question, those pilot stations are something like routers for the network. So they actually build a network. So it is a mesh network point to point, but you can also route the information via those pilot stations. So this is to my best knowledge. Of course, in Ale not work that much, but you know, we are just starting with our club to use that. Okay, I hope that at least a little bit of information is okay. Okay, so sorry, yes, you.
So, how can I become the ham radio operator here in this city?
You're from, sorry?
From Novi Sad.
From Novi Sad, okay. So there is Yankee Uniform 7, Bravo, Papa, Quebec, I think it's called, Ham Radio Club. You know that restaurant, Giardino, those are their, you know, it is theirs. So I think they're close to that. I'm not in that club. But you can go and talk with the people. I'm going to connect you with later on. Please stay just for a moment. You just go there, and then there is some basic, you know, basic test that you prepare, and then when you pass that test, you become a licensed ham radio operator. Before that, you can also enjoy the hobby, meaning you can listen to the broadcasts, but you don't have the license to broadcast yourself. So there are ham radio clubs in almost every city. I'm the member of Yankee Uniform 7 Alpha Oscar Papa, which is Zrenjanin's ham radio club. I'm not a member of this club, so I don't know where they are exactly, but I'm going to make inquiries. So please, we have a site by Yankee Uniform 7 Alpha Oscar Papa.com. If you have any information, you can become a member of our club. It is not connected to the city. You can be a member of multiple clubs. So it is easy. Just go and talk to the people and, you know, make friends, make new, you know, point of views. All right, so any more? Sorry, yes?
You mentioned this as a way to communicate during disasters. Maybe this question is not directly related to ham radio, but in the examples you gave, what did they use for power source? I mean, this cannot work without power.
Yes, yes, of course. You can use whatever power source that you have available at your hand. Some of the stations are very, you know, you can vary the power source that you have. For example, that I mentioned, we're going to build tomorrow that transmitter for Morse code. It can take anything from 1.5 battery to maybe 12 volts battery, something like that. So you can use, I have a station which I connect to the car battery. So you can use car battery. I actually did that, you know, just connect it to the, and let the car running, you know. So yes, and there is also some movement inside of ham radio movement which is called QRP, which is mastery of low power emitment. So meaning I'm not going to do 1 kilowatt of power because, you know, I can. I'm going to try to use as little as possible. QRP uses 5 watts or less. So with 5 watts you can work, for example, all of the Europe if you have good antennas. For example, this Ale and all of the digital modes use usually about 20 to 30 watts of power. And with 20 watts of power, we communicate with Japan. You know, it's less than a light bulb. There are no light bulbs anymore. Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
You said encryption isn't allowed, so is there any way to like SSH to a computer 100 kilometers away without internet?
Sorry, can you go a little bit closer to the mic? I didn't quite catch.
You said encryption isn't allowed.
Yes.
So is there any way to use something like SSH to connect to a computer 100 kilometers away?
All right, you just to use it like a terminal. Well, it is possible. It is highly unpractical because the speeds that are gained by using Ale communication system are not that great. So you can transfer text, you can transfer data in limited amounts, but actually to SSH to your home computer via it is possible, it is not practical. So we don't use it like that. So you have a BBS software installed on the pilot station, so you transfer. Actually, you know, what do I need for the SSH? Like, well, maybe it could be done. I don't know. Let's think about that. So far, it is not used like that. So that's, and we are not allowed to use encryption in our communication. Encryption is used by Army. You can pick up their transmission. For example, we listen for the transmission of the submarines. It's very interesting, you know. You can see the waterfall. You can see some kind of data coming through, but you don't know what it is, you know. So yes, and the American Army uses Ale also. So yes. So any more questions, guys and girls? Sorry. No. Okay. So it's been real pleasure, and I hope to see you tomorrow on the workshop, and just to make new friends. Who knows? Maybe some new amateur radio operators. Thank you.